The scream that came from my 4-year-old daughter didn't sound human. It sounded like pure terror. I dropped my plate before I even understood what had happened. Then I saw her. She was clutching her face, crying so hard she couldn't breathe. Steam was still rising from her tiny pink sweater, and my sister was standing over her, holding an empty coffee mug. My name is Naomi Carter. I'm 31 years old, and the day my own sister threw boiling coffee at my little girl over a plastic toy was the day my entire family stopped being my family. It happened at my parents' Sunday lunch. My daughter, Lily, had been playing quietly with her 5-year-old cousin, Mason. They'd been laughing, trading toy dinosaurs, arguing the way little kids always do. Then Lily reached for a blue dinosaur Mason was holding. Before I could even stand, my sister, Rachel, grabbed her coffee and threw it. Not splashed, not spilled. Threw it. The mug hit the floor. Coffee covered Lily's cheek, neck, and shoulder. She let out a scream I'll hear for the rest of my life. I ran to her. Her skin was already turning bright red. She buried her face against my chest, shaking so violently that I thought she might stop breathing. "Mommy," those were the only words she managed. I looked up. Rachel wasn't apologizing. She wasn't crying. She actually rolled her eyes. Maybe now she'll learn not to steal. For a second, I genuinely couldn't process what I'd just heard. Then my father slammed his hand on the table. "Naomi." I thought he was yelling at Rachel. He wasn't. "Take that girl and get out of our house." I stared at him. "What?" "She's ruined lunch." My mother nodded without even looking at Lily's burns. "She's always causing problems." I felt something inside me go completely numb. Not angry, not shocked, just done. I picked Lily up carefully. She was still sobbing against my shoulder. I looked around the room one last time. Nobody followed us. Nobody checked on her. Nobody called an ambulance. As I reached my car, I dialed exactly one number. The person answered immediately. I didn't waste a single second. My family just burned Lily. A long silence followed. Then the voice quietly asked, "How badly?" I looked down at my daughter's blistering skin, took one shaky breath, and answered, "Bad enough that tomorrow we're cutting every tie we have with them." The drive to the emergency room felt endless. Lily cried the entire way. Every few minutes, she begged me to make the burning stop. There isn't a pain worse than hearing your child ask for help you can't immediately give. By the time we arrived, I was shaking so badly, I could barely carry her inside. The triage nurse took one look at Lily's face and immediately called for a burn specialist. Everything after that happened fast. Cold water, sterile dressings, pain medication, a doctor gently examining the blisters spreading across her cheek and shoulder. I stood beside the hospital bed, holding Lily's tiny hand while she cried herself to sleep. Then the doctor turned to me. "How did this happen?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Not because I didn't know, because saying it out loud made it real. My sister threw hot coffee at her. The doctor's expression changed instantly. Intentionally. I nodded. Silence filled the room. Then he quietly said, "I have to report this." I looked up. "What?" "These injuries are consistent with an intentional burn." My stomach tightened. Within minutes, a hospital social worker entered the room. She wasn't accusing me. She was protecting Lily. She asked gentle questions. Who was present? Who called for help? Who stopped the attack? Every answer felt worse than the one before. Nobody helped. Nobody defended my daughter. Nobody even followed us outside. The social worker stopped writing for a moment. So, every adult watched. I nodded. She looked heartbroken. Then my phone started vibrating. Dad. I ignored it. It rang again. Then Mom. Then Rachel. One call after another. None of them had called to ask about Lily. They wanted to know if I was still overreacting. The final voicemail came from my father. His voice was cold. "If you involve the police, don't ever come back." I played it for the social worker. She listened without interrupting, then quietly reached for another form. "What is that?" I asked. She looked directly at me. "Mandatory reporting." Before I could answer, Another voice came from the doorway. Mrs. Carter? I turned around. A uniformed police officer was standing there. Not because I'd called, because the hospital already had. He looked at Lily sleeping in the bed, then back at me, and asked the question that changed everything. Can you tell me exactly who threw the coffee? The police officer waited patiently. He didn't rush me. He didn't interrupt. He simply took out a small notebook. I looked at Lily sleeping in the hospital bed. Her tiny face was covered with cooling dressings. Seeing her like that gave me all the strength I needed. My sister, I said. Rachel Mitchell. He wrote her name down. Walk me through exactly what happened. So I did. Every second. The children playing together. The toy dinosaur. Rachel grabbing her coffee, throwing it directly into Lily's face. My parents screaming at me instead of helping my daughter. The officer never looked away. When I finished, he closed the notebook. Did anyone try to help your daughter?
No.
Did anyone call emergency services?
No.
Did anyone stop your sister? I swallowed hard.
No.
He nodded slowly. I understand. Then he asked something I wasn't expecting. Does the house have security cameras? My heart skipped. Security cameras. Of course. Dad had installed cameras throughout the house after someone stole packages from the porch the previous year. The living room, the dining room, the hallway, everything. Rachel had attacked Lily in full view of one of them. I think so. The officer immediately wrote something else. We'll secure the footage before it's deleted. My stomach tightened, because for the first time since the attack, I realized there might actually be proof. Not opinions. Not family arguments. Proof. Then my phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't my parents. It was my husband, Mason, calling. I'd been so focused on Lily that I'd forgotten he was flying back from Chicago. I answered immediately. I'm outside. I'll be there in 1 minute. When I walked into the hospital lobby, Mason was already waiting. The moment he saw my face, he knew. He didn't ask about the family. He didn't ask about the police. He looked straight past me, toward Lily's hospital room. How bad is it? I couldn't hold myself together anymore. The doctors think she'll recover. He closed his eyes in relief, then opened them again. Good. His voice became calm, almost frighteningly calm. Now tell me who did this. I told him everything. He listened without saying a word. When I finished, he reached into his briefcase and took out his phone. Typed one short message, then put away. What did you just do? I asked. He looked directly into my eyes. I told our family attorney to be at my office first thing tomorrow morning. I frowned.
Why?
He took one slow breath. Because your parents have no idea whose house they've been living in. Mason's words echoed in my head. Your parents have no idea whose house they've been living in. For a moment, I forgot about everything else. What do you mean? He looked toward Lily's room before answering. Not here. We walked back inside. Lily was still asleep. The burn specialist had just finished changing her dressings. He smiled gently. The burns are painful, but they're mostly superficial. We expect a full physical recovery. I nodded. Physically. Emotionally was another story. The doctor left. Mason quietly pulled 2 folders from his briefcase. I never wanted you to find out like this. I frowned. Find out what? He opened the first folder. Inside were property records, trust documents, legal filings. Every page carried the same address. My parents' house. I looked up. Why do you have these? Because I own it. The room went silent. I blinked twice. What? My grandfather purchased the property 12 years ago. I stared at him. I've been going there for 6 years. I know. Mom and Dad told me Grandpa left it to them. Mason slowly shook his head. He didn't. He handed me another document. The registered owner wasn't my parents. It wasn't my grandparents. It wasn't even Mason personally. The property belonged to a family trust. One controlled entirely by Mason after his grandfather passed away. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Why would you let them live there?
He sighed.
Because when we got engaged, your father asked for help. He said they were struggling financially after retiring. So you charged them rent?
No.
I looked up. You let them live there for free? He nodded. For almost 5 years. My stomach turned. The people who had just thrown our injured daughter out of the house
Didn't even own it.
Then Mason opened the second folder. This is why I called our attorney. Inside was a lease agreement. The signatures belonged to my father. The terms were simple. If the occupants committed violence against any guest on the property, the lease could be terminated immediately. No notice. No grace period. Nothing. I looked at Mason. He met my eyes calmly. They told you to get out of their house. He closed the folder. Tomorrow morning, they'll find out it was never theirs. Then my phone buzzed. It was the police officer. His message contained only one sentence. We recovered the security footage. You need to see this immediately. I opened the video in the hospital room. The police officer had already blurred the faces of the children. Everything else was crystal clear. The timestamp showed exactly 1:17 p.m. Lily and her cousin were sitting on the living room rug, trading toy dinosaurs, laughing. No fighting, no screaming, no pushing.
Just two little kids playing.
My father sat in his recliner reading the newspaper. My mother carried dessert plates into the dining room. Rachel walked in holding a mug of steaming coffee.
She stopped.
Looked at the children. Then Lily reached toward the blue dinosaur. The cousin didn't even resist. He simply loosened his grip. Rachel suddenly stepped forward, raised the mug, and threw the coffee directly at Lily's face. Not accidentally, not carelessly, deliberately. The room fell silent. Even through a security camera, with no audio, you could see the horror. Lily collapsed onto the floor screaming. Then came the part that broke me. My father didn't run toward Lily. He stood up, pointed at me, and motioned toward the front door. The officer paused the video. You should watch the rest. I nodded. Rachel calmly picked up her empty mug, walked into the kitchen, as if nothing had happened. My mother looked at Lily for barely 2 seconds, then followed Rachel. Neither woman checked the burns. Neither woman called for help. The officer stopped the footage again. That's enough. I couldn't speak, because the camera hadn't just recorded an assault. It had recorded every adult choosing not to help a screaming 4-year-old. The officer quietly closed his laptop. This video changes everything. Mason squeezed my hand. I know. The officer looked directly at us. We're filing felony child abuse charges. My stomach tightened. Felony. Rachel wasn't facing a family argument anymore. She was facing prison. Just then, another officer entered the room carrying a sealed evidence bag. Sir. He handed it to his partner. We also recovered this. Inside the bag was Rachel's phone. The officer unlocked it using a warrant that had just been approved. He opened the most recent conversation, then slowly turned the screen toward me. The messages weren't between Rachel and a friend. They were between Rachel and my mother. The last text had been sent less than 10 minutes before the attack. It read, "If Lily touches Mason's toys again, teach her a lesson she'll never forget." The room went completely silent, because suddenly, Rachel hadn't acted alone. Nobody spoke for several seconds. I kept staring at the message on Rachel's phone. If Lily touches Mason's toys again, teach her a lesson she'll never forget. I read it again, then a third time, hoping I'd misunderstood. I hadn't. My mother had sent it. The officer quietly placed the phone back into the evidence bag. Mrs. Carter, he said gently, this message changes the investigation.
How?
It suggests the assault may have been encouraged beforehand. My stomach turned. Encouraged. That word somehow felt even worse than planned, because my own mother had watched my daughter walk into that house, already expecting someone to hurt her. Mason wrapped an arm around my shoulders. I didn't even realize I was shaking until then. The officer's phone rang. He answered, listened, then looked at me. We've just spoken with your nephew's father. I frowned. My sister's ex-husband? He nodded. He asked to meet you. An hour later, he arrived at the hospital carrying a small backpack. His name was Eric. We had always been friendly, but after his divorce from Rachel, we'd barely spoken. The first thing he did was walk over to Lily's bed. He gently kissed her forehead. "I'm so sorry." Then he turned to me. "I need to tell you something." The room became quiet again. Eric opened the backpack. Inside was a children's tablet. "Mason uses this every weekend he's with me." I didn't understand. "So, it automatically backs up everything." He unlocked it, opened the family messaging app, then handed it to the detective. "There." The detective scrolled. His expression changed instantly. Message after message. Week after week. Rachel complaining about Lily. My mother agreeing. Then one message stopped everyone cold. Rachel had written it 3 days earlier. "Next time she acts spoiled, I'm not holding back." My mother replied only 1 minute later.
Good.
"Someone needs to discipline her before Naomi gets there." The detective slowly looked up. This wasn't a moment of anger. Nobody answered, because nobody could. He closed the tablet, then quietly said, "We're requesting an additional warrant." I frowned. "For what?" He looked directly at Mason. "We believe there's enough evidence to charge more than one person." Just then, another detective rushed into the room. His face was pale. "You need to see this." He held up another evidence bag. Inside were the house security system's deleted recordings. Someone had tried to erase them. Less than 15 minutes after we left, the detective placed the recovered hard drive on the hospital table. "Your father's security system automatically backed up deleted footage." Nobody said a word. He connected it to his laptop. "This recording was deleted 14 minutes after you left the house." My stomach tightened. Someone hadn't just hurt Lily. Someone had tried to erase the evidence. The video began. It picked up exactly where the first recording ended. Rachel was washing the coffee mug. My mother stood beside her. Neither woman looked upset. Neither looked guilty. Then, my father walked into the kitchen. He looked toward the hallway camera,
Pointed at it.
and said something. There was no audio, but the detective already knew how to read lips. He paused the frame, then quietly spoke. He said, "Delete everything." The room fell silent. The recording continued. My father disappeared into his office. 30 seconds later, the security cameras went offline. Then another camera activated. One nobody in the family knew existed. A cloud backup camera installed by the security company. It captured my father sitting at his computer, opening the security software, selecting every recording from that afternoon, then pressing
Delete.
The detective stopped the video. "That's obstruction of justice." I closed my eyes. It wasn't enough that they hurt Lily. It wasn't enough that they threw us out. They tried to erase her pain as if it had never happened. Just then, another officer entered. He smiled for the first time all day. "We found the neighbor." I frowned. "What neighbor?" "The woman across the street." He handed me a written statement. She had been gardening in her front yard. She saw me carrying Lily to my car. She saw Rachel standing in the doorway, laughing, not crying, not apologizing, laughing. The witness had even taken photographs. One showed Lily wrapped in my arms. Another showed my father pointing toward the street, ordering us to leave. The detective carefully closed the file. "Mrs. Carter." I looked up. "I've been doing this job for 23 years. He paused. "I've never seen grandparents choose cruelty this many times in a single afternoon." Then my phone vibrated. It was our family attorney. I answered immediately. "We've finished reviewing the lease." I held my breath, and he smiled. "The eviction notice has already been served. Tomorrow morning, my parents would wake up in a house they no longer had any legal right to stay in." The next morning began with silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that comes after a storm when everyone knows nothing will ever be the same again. At exactly 8 a.m., Mason, our attorney, 2 sheriff's deputies, and I pulled into my parents' driveway. An official eviction notice was already taped to the front door. My father opened it before anyone knocked. For a moment, he simply stared at us. Then at the deputies. Then at the paperwork. His shoulders dropped. He knew. "It's over," he whispered. The sheriff handed him the court order. "The lease has been terminated effective immediately due to a violent assault committed against a guest on the property and the subsequent destruction of evidence." My mother started crying. Rachel wasn't there. She had been arrested the night before. My father looked at Mason. You planned this. Mason calmly shook his head. No, you did. The only thing I planned was protecting my wife and daughter. Silence. Then my father looked at me. I never thought it would go this far. I met his eyes. It went this far the moment you chose your pride over your granddaughter. Nobody argued, because nobody could. Over the next hour, my parents packed their belongings under the supervision of the deputies. Neither Mason nor I said a word. There was nothing left to say. 3 months later, Rachel accepted a plea agreement that included prison time, probation, and mandatory counseling. My father pleaded guilty to obstruction of justice after admitting he had deleted the security footage. My mother avoided prison but received probation for her role in encouraging the assault. Lily recovered physically. The burns healed. The scars became difficult to see. But every now and then, she'd still ask, "Mommy, why didn't Grandma help me?" That question never got easier to answer. A year later, Mason and I watched Lily run across a playground without fear. She laughed, smiled, played with other children again. And in that moment, I realized something. My family didn't fall apart because I reported them. They fell apart the moment they decided a 4-year-old little girl deserved pain instead of protection. I didn't destroy my family. I simply refused to let them destroy my daughter.